When you find that thing that's your everything, it stops becoming work. A brand is more than just clothing. It's a representation of an idea that you're looking to kind of push into the world. This is our everything. We're not here for a short time trying to take advantage of a fad. This is here for the long run.
Hey, welcome to Table Moments, the Homies podcast. This is a podcast where we talk about anything and everything, but no politics. I'm your host and captain, Ayman. This week, we have a very special guest. He's an entrepreneur at the intersection of fashion and technology, creating an augmented reality platform that will allow artists, brands, and organizations to engage with their audiences in futuristic ways, letting anyone to showcase what it means to pursue one's everything. A fellow creative and close personal friend, Abdulalim, founder of Everything the Brand. Welcome to the show.
Appreciate it, man. That was an awesome intro.
I think a lot of people think about starting a brand. They have ideas, they want to go create it in the world, but it just seems like no one really knows how to start it, but you as someone who's actually done it. How would you say someone can go start, or what your experience was like when you started?
I think I'll start with kind of what my experience was when I started. So as you know, I've been making clothes, since I was about 16 years old. So 10, 11 years now. And I started in high school just like on the idea of like, I want to make some money. I've seen and heard it's not too hard. Like, why don't we just get some shirts and make something? And started the idea with a couple of friends when I was in high school, and just seeing kind of how quickly we were able to kind of build traction, and just kind of one of those like fads. And like, we had some popularity at our school at the time, and it was a pretty big high school. So being able to sell and kind of like, generate a buzz at a local level was really cool to see. And then when we graduated, went to college, we kind of, put a stop to it. My friends and I were going to different places. But then like I realized when I was in college that like I really enjoyed that process. Being able to build something, from your own thoughts, your own ideas, your designs, your concepts. And at that point we had done t-shirts, hats, hoodies, pretty simple streetwear stuff. But being able to combine, the creative process, but also business, I really enjoyed that intersection. At that point I was like, okay, I have this, what I called my baby at the time, right? Like where I was just like, okay, I've put a lot of years into this. This thing has taught me a lot. Like I've learned, through this time. You have to think about it. It was, 2013, 2014. So very early in the e-commerce game. Again, we were super young. So just kind of learning a lot very quickly as this space was emerging at the same time. So was able to kind of get on Shopify very early and watch Shopify scale to what they are today, and be able to kind of grow our brand with as they've been able to grow. And our experience for me was just like, okay, like I have this baby, like I really enjoy this process, but like, what is the vision? What do I want to do? And at that point I had, we were doing some content creation with some t-shirts that we had done. And I took like, there's like a picture of me on like doing some BTS stuff. And I just captioned it, "What's your everything?" And because it meant to me that like what I'm working on, this brand that I'm building and these clothes that we're making, is like me working towards my everything. And that kind of really stuck as like a brand concept that really like stuck with me. And like, as I told a couple of people who were very close to me at the time, they were like, whoa, that's really powerful, because not only is it very specific to you as an individual and specific to anybody who kind of thinks about that, right? Like what's your everything, but it's also very broad that anybody can really adopt that mindset, right? And so for me, it's like, that's where I kind of moved the brand to. I spent my last 2 years in undergrad really like vision boarding and planning what, the brand was going to be, and like what our goal towards, this becoming like a full scale company. And at the time I was like, okay, I know how to make clothes. I know how to market clothes. I know e-commerce. The clothing market, especially on the internet, is very saturated. Like how do we differentiate ourselves? And being from the Bay Area myself, growing up in Berkeley, especially, as the emergence of the tech boom, and like you have all these big tech companies going crazy that like I got to work for when I was like young. I was like, we need some tech element. We need some type of differentiator at tech level. At that time, I had come across augmented reality. We realized that like this was like a real viable option for us to incorporate into, our brand. It aligned with our mission, with our platform, our mission of what's your everything, and being able to story tell through augmented reality, right? Because what's your everything became kind of our slogan. And as we became more of, just from a simple streetwear brand to a lifestyle brand, looking to, help people and tell people stories and motivate people to pursue their everything. We thought that, on top of products through our clothing, film, and photography, we'd be able to leverage augmented reality to be able to tell stories on a new medium in a different way.
I think you make a really good point about the differentiation, especially in a field like clothing where it is very saturated. Like, what is that thing that lets you stand out? And I think the interesting thing about what you're doing is not only you're doing the clothing, you're incorporating technology, but I think you're proving out how technology can work with fashion, and that maybe this could be a way for you guys to let others do the same thing, which I think is a big big struggle creatives have.
100%. I think just going back to why we brought it on, and one big thing about building a brand and like building something that you're going to be investing so much, not just resources, right? Like any resources you have, but just the energy and the time that goes into trying to build something like this. It has to mean something to you. It has to align with who you are as a person, right? So for me, this really aligned to like the things that I was showing, and everything that we're doing that we've built, we did it within the brand first as a proof of concept, kind of like exactly what you're saying. So we, from clothing production, obviously, we're a clothing brand, so we knew how to make clothes. But when we introduced augmented reality, we introduced it in a way that we were looking to storytell. So our first augmented reality project was the physical magazine had augmented reality overlays on specific pages that were only accessible to people who bought the physical magazine, right? So we developed an app in-house. People who bought the magazine were able to kind of access this behind the scenes of our first issue magazine, of us putting that magazine together, in the behind the scenes of each of those photo shoots. So that magazine in itself was also kind of like documenting our story. So it aligned with our documentary at the time too, right? The foundation. And so you can see like we highlighted 4 key drops, and in those 4 drops in the visuals, I leveraged the people closest to me, right? My family, my friends, my extended community. Having that like showcase in that magazine was able to, through the clothing, we were able to kind of showcase who those people are to me. But then through augmented reality, we were able to tell a story in a more behind the scenes, authentic, it's like as if you're really there. And so being able to kind of have that proof of concept allows us to kind of showcase, okay, these are viable ways to leverage this technology. These are viable ways to incorporate it in our brand story, in our brand offering as who we are and what we're able to do. And that's where the vision came up of, leveraging AR as a service as well. So not something that we just develop in-house, but something that we now offer as a service. Because of that project, we were actually able to secure our first augmented reality, as a service project with Grace Weber, who's an R&B singer, as a part of her debut album rollout, generate augmented reality experience for her biggest fans. She had like a community built already that she gave access to of this augmented reality experience to.
Yeah, I think in the tech world, they have a term for it. It's not an appealing term. They call it dog fooding. Basically, you feed yourself. You use your own thing to prove it out. You prove it out. And I've always taken that approach with like even the stuff I create, or like I do mostly content, but I like making stuff and building stuff, and I use it first. And I'm like the first test customer. Once I get it to a point that I like it, then I can actually feel confident giving it to other people. And that's the approach I even took with these wallets too. Like I literally use them.
Yeah. It's that same approach, right? It's like there's no better way to sell something than actually showcase how you're, first not even marketing it to, a consumer or like a end buyer, but like just using it as yourself and like the showcasing the value it brought to you, and then kind of putting up as an offering.
Yeah. I think one of my worries sometimes is like, I like these things. I just don't know if there are other people out there who like these things. So it's just like, this is where like testing, I think, really comes in. And then even just talking about it and just trialing it, like you guys, like you did with everything the brand, you talked about it and put it out there. When you get reception back and people are like, yo, I really mess with that message, then it's sort of validation that you're headed in the right direction.
100%. I mean, for us, it was, it started off again with an idea of like having seen it applied somewhere else. And then like, okay, what does this look like for us? Does it make sense? And for me, I'm very big this, do things make sense? Do things fit our brand ethos? Do they fit our story? Do they fit what we're looking to accomplish on a macro scale? And it was something that like almost aligned perfectly, right? It's like we needed a tech element. This is something that was like not only as from a creative perspective, how creative it was, but had so much utility from a storytelling and marketing perspective as well, right? It opened up a new marketing channel for us to be able to generate content in different ways. Like I'm sure you're familiar with like, shock value content and marketing and stuff like that. It just allowed us to kind of step into those lanes, but from an authentic way. It doesn't seem like we're just trying different things and kind of shooting in the dark. It was like, no, these are slow, methodical processes that we implemented over time, but really implemented in-house first. And now we're able to like, hey, this is how we did it. This is what we did. Now we're able to offer these services up to other organizations and other people.
I think there's a point to be made about being early, because VR and all that stuff, Apple just released their stuff with the augmented reality. It's like you're in the perfect position to like make content and deliver it because the devices now exist in, I think, large enough quantities and people actually want them.
Yeah, it's interesting, right? It's interesting kind of seeing like where we were when we first, or where the space was and the technology was when we first kind of started developing in it, and then to where it is today. And it's as if it's like, more common. It's not more, but it is common, right? It's like people have common knowledge around these things. Maybe not so much the details between VR and AR. Like we're still getting that. People tend to think it's the same thing. With augmented reality for us, it was like being able to have had something tangible to showcase. Going back to like storytelling, marketing, right? right? Like I'm very big on storytelling marketing and like showcasing your process as you're developing something before you get to market, and like kind of generating that real-time feedback and response from prospective customers, but also just a general audience that might be following you. Being able to kind of showcase the things we're building over the course of, what was it, 2019, 2020, and then being able to release our first project in 2021 with our first AR as a service project for Grace Weber coming out in 2022. It just kind of showcased how quickly we were able to, like how quickly that storyline, and that Grace Weber project, actually, funny enough, like it came from us documenting our process and somebody that I know reaching out to me and saying, hey, I see you guys are developing something in AR, freelancing for this artist, and AR's come up, would you guys be open to having a conversation? And this was a year before we were even planning on doing anything service oriented focused or going to market, I should say. Being able to kind of document that story, showcase what we were doing as early as we were doing it, definitely not only just, set us up at that time, but set us up for, the things that we're working on now and kind of our go to market now and like the conversations that we're having today.
That's the merit of just even showcasing even the build process, which is a hard thing to do, I think, when you're trying to build and document at the same time. It's awful because it's just like it takes time
so
away
hard
from the building.
Yeah, it's so hard, especially for me. I'm very like, I like to work. I like to do things and focus on things. And like, Amon is the one who like was really like hounding me, like, hey, listen, like you need to record, you need to put this out. And I was just like, look, I don't like just putting stuff out. Like, I don't like, like how if it doesn't go that way? How about if it goes a different way? And so that's where like we came up with the approach of doing the documentary. So, in 2020, we released our first documentary film, just kind of showcasing foundational elements of, what we're building. That's what we called it, the foundation. And, looking to build like that 3-tier company focused around fashion, storytelling through film, as well as that technology piece, and kind of showcasing that foundation of all of those verticals and, kind of shedding a light into the back end, what it takes to kind of develop these things, but then also like the direction we're looking to take it as well. We've been regularly put out content at a especially when we have releases and drops, leveraging AR, leveraging just, traditional photo and video. But now we're looking to this year, especially kind of ramp up our social media efforts and our content efforts as we get our own physical space now to be able to operate out of. So a lot more on that side to come for sure.
Yeah. I don't know. That's the sucky thing, because the creative process when you're actually building, it's not clean. It's not something where, you have a plan, it goes according to plan, nothing goes wrong. It's all this like tweaking and just like, oh, this didn't work out. Oh, this expectation. Oh, my assumption here was wrong. And so you're constantly like fiddling with like physics and realities of the world. And this is the issue I had to deal with this wallet, but even with software and stuff, like it'd be dope to just screen record and like, hey, I just built the software. But it's like, it's a lot of just reading to figure out why it doesn't work because there's a bunch of bugs and all this stuff. And that's not interesting content to watch.
Finding that balance, right? Like for me, I'm very big on like, the stuff we put out, it needs to be structured at a certain level. We want to have a true element of authenticity behind it, but also showcase, like, tell it in a story so it is chronological, but like also showcase the parts that didn't work, right? When you're trying to develop something, maybe something, especially something that's new, right? Or trying to play in a space that's continuously emerging, and like you're just trying to stay up to date. And with like, I spent so much time just trying to keep up with like what Meta, Apple, Snapchat, Google are doing in this space, especially just around like hardware, because I'm just like, I have to make sure that we are compatible and we're building in the right side of the hardware that's coming out, right? And it's great to like, obviously, like I don't have your background from a technical perspective, but like I am very familiar just working in tech, on my side, kind of understand that language that, are able to kind of pick up on trends, trajectories. It's funny, I remember having a conversation around like, we're going to get to a point where like regular glasses are going to be like AR lenses, and we're going to be able to kind of just like touch these. And I remember it was such a point of like contention with a couple of people. And they were just like, there's no way you're telling me everyone's going to wear glasses. I wear glasses. I don't even want to wear them. I'm like, we're going to get to a point where everybody's just going to wear them because of the added utility to your life, right? Yeah. And now we're here with the Apple Vision Pros. Obviously, it's, a little dystopian. They're very big, clunky. There's a wire hanging to your pocket. It's weird, but I think this is, just the first step on the Apple side. Obviously, Meta's already kind of come out with their product. But like, as the hardware improves and we get to a more sleek and, lightweight hardware, the software will be there. And I want to make sure that we're in position at that time and developing with the right folks in the right industries to be able to, remain a catalyst in this space.
And that's the thing about like seeing the future. Sometimes you sound crazy because you're like, no, this is what's going to happen, man. Watch, just watch. But then sometimes you're too early.
I know,
Yeah, for sure. Even like with stuff like like podcasting, table moments, all this stuff. It's just like, I was trying to tell people, bro, this could
I
be
was there.
something.
I was one of the people you were trying to tell.
Yeah. And I think the thing a lot of people have to learn to accept is that the people closest to you will probably be the people who won't have your vision. When you talk to a stranger, you're like, oh yeah, I do this, I'm gonna do this, whatever. They're like, okay, I don't know this person, but they don't feel one type of way or the other. But like, I feel like the closer they are to you, the harder it is for the people to accept what you're saying, especially when they're like grand goals or even predictions about the future and they just don't know how deep or how much you know about certain things or the space you're talking about. And so you do sound crazy. You do sound crazy, but you're only crazy until you pull it off or the future happens. So
Exactly. And I think like, there is wisdom in like, sometimes just keeping things, to yourself just for the time being. And then like when you build them out and kind of do them and like, and not to say that like you shouldn't talk about, like if you're confident about something, like you should 100% have that conversation. But I'm very much of like the mindset, like it's very catered, like who I have certain conversations with, like in terms of maybe things that I've got going on, things that we're building, the visions that I have long term. Again, like you said, not everybody's going to get it. Not everybody's going to understand. Not everybody has the same dots connected or correlations aligned that you might have, just given your research and time in the space, right? And nor should they. There shouldn't be like, I'm not going to also have an expectation or a false expectation that everybody should understand. All this makes complete sense, right? Because it doesn't unless you know.
I don't know. I guess it was from a position of naivete. First time trying to do something different than most of the people I know. This is just one of those things that you just get slapped with this reality that, people are not going to see it. People are going to call you crazy. It's all just this, oh, you're working on that little thing. And then until it becomes a big thing.
Until that little thing is not so little anymore, right?
Right. Yeah, it's not so little. It's just like, okay.
And again, not everybody's going to understand the vision. Not everybody's going to maybe want to understand the vision either, right? Yeah. And that's everybody's fair prerogative. That's your decision. That's fine. But I can tell you, for me at least, it's not going to stop what I'm trying to do. Like I know what I'm working towards. I know exactly the path we're on, and like you're constantly iterating and trying different things and trying to learn. But then and then sometimes like even like you can get lost in it, right? It's like, dang, like things aren't progressing the way you thought they were. But then you just got to take a step back or 2 steps or 10 feet back and then understand like, wait, I started here, right? And now I'm here. So it's just like, it's not where you are in the moment. It's like, how far have you come? And, are you closer to where you were trying to go than yesterday?
Yeah. And that's one of the merits of documenting your work, because you get to see how far you've come, which it's difficult to do, but I think the way I've settled on is to deal with how unclean and how unlinear it is, and then after the fact, document what you've learned.
I mean, this, right? There's multiple ways to kind of document something, tell the story, right? There's that every day for someone who might be following you every day, and there's that longer at the end, like, hey, this is how we got from here to here over 2 years, 3 years, right? And so it's just finding the time. Obviously, consecration, and this better than anyone, is consecration takes so much time, but it's just like finding the time to take that short form content on a regular basis while combining it with maybe that long form storytelling.
Yeah, it's like constantly I find myself in a position where I'm like, all right, I can't work on this because I need to have a camera ready, which means then I got to get the setup ready, and then I got to get the lighting ready, and then it kind of delays the work, and then I get frustrated. I'm just like, you know what, let me just build this and let me just go. And then I just like whip out the iPhone and just like, all right guys, this is just the IG story. Here's some updates.
And that content is meant for who that content is meant for, right?
Yeah.
And then like it's also for someone who's in it, right? You're someone who's in it, like you're doing this every day. It's different when, all pun intended, this is your everything. Like you are building something that you are not just passionate about, but are truly invested in, from the time you put in, from the visions you've created, the plans, and the things that you've already checked off that vision board, right? Like you're truly invested. And so when it is something like that, when it is something that, again, all pun intended, you're everything, it's a little easier to kind of put that time in, because sometimes it stops feeling like work at a point in time, right?
Yeah, I think Naval says this. He put together a series of all his little how to get rich without getting lucky. One of them is do something that looks like work to others but feels like play to you. If you can get lost in your work, you're on the right track. And so it's just about finding that thing. And that's where it's just a lot of, I think, trial and error sometimes comes in, but also listening to yourself and seeing where your spirit takes you.
No, 100%. I know for me, it's like I really enjoy the process of brand building, knowing that a brand is more than just clothing, right? A brand is a brand. Like it's a representation of an idea that you're looking to kind of push into the world. And for me, it's this idea of what's your everything. Like for me, the idea came from like the culmination of my life, really. And like that was, I think, pretty evident in the foundation, the documentary we put out, and just kind of showcasing like the world I come from, the world our parents come from, how that influenced me, how that influenced our communities, the communities that we did grow up in, all those things. And just understanding, okay, like a solid understanding of like all those things, and then knowing it's like, what is the future that I want, right? And it's kind of like marrying those two. And it's like, okay, I know what I want. I'm going to work towards this thing, this type of life. Building this is my everything. Building, you're seeing kind of like, because this all touches every aspect of my life. Building this brand is really my everything because it encompasses all of my life.
It's one thing to build a brand. It's another thing to like make a physical product and get people to pay for it. I'm learning the difficulties of that now. Like Table Moments as a podcast is cool. I've gotten a chance to connect with a lot of people just through the content, through the comment section, through the live streaming, and through the DMs, actually, weirdly enough, getting the chance to build relationships and make friends. But now the next step is, how do I take it further to a point that it's self-sustaining? And so that's why I've gotten into like making these wallets, because it's something I made for myself. And I figured maybe there are other people out there who might be interested in it. Also learning the challenges of e-commerce, designing a product, convincing people to go buy it, and then even sharing it with the world outside of Table Moments to see if there's a bigger market for it. Like, you have this experience, especially considering you've actually made clothing, and more than just putting on an iron-on a shirt, actually going out and designing the clothes from the ground up.
I mean, for me, it's again, like, everything that we do is like a part of like my larger vision of building this brand, right? So it's like we started off, like I said, working with a local manufacturer, and it's awesome just because like the relationships you build when you're doing something as well with people. Like, right, I was 16 years old. We were working with a local manufacturer based in Oakland. I have an awesome relationship with that same manufacturer, and they've scaled exponentially. Like, they were some small warehouse by the airport, and now they've like, I think they expanded, like bought like two of like the two sides parts, and like they're huge. They're in a huge operation now, and like being able to have that direct phone line connection and relationship just kind of showcases like when you're trying to do something and trying to learn. And like we went to them and like, hey, we have this idea, can you help us? And they were like, yeah. And then I've learned just like through trial and error, through pursuing kind of like my everything, I've learned the process of making clothes at a local level. And then again, through doing, I've learned the process of making clothes at an international level, right? Like working with like international manufacturers in different parts of the world. And then like I was like, okay, we want to take it to, I want to learn all the tiers, right? All the steps. So I was like, we need to kind of have our first like, our own cut and sew product that, we learned the cut and sew operation. And that's actually part of the reason I went to LA, right? I went to LA to really expand the brand, build relationships out there, but also to really build out our cut and sew operation. I went to LA not knowing anybody in the space, not knowing local manufacturers. I just know that, there's a huge fashion district and a lot of manufacturers and a lot of fabric stores that I'd be able to kind of go to. And so moved down to LA, just started going downtown, walking around, going door to door, talking to people, having conversations. And a conversation that I had at like a local store took me to where I was introduced to a local manufacturer who's an older Peruvian man. When I told him my ideas and what we're looking to get made, he's like, oh, my son does these things. Gave me his son's address or his phone number. And then I talked to his son. I ended up pulling up to the manufacturer, and then they have a full operation. He's just like, yeah, we can do this, no problem. And so I got to learn through working with this man. And now, he developed our whole cut and sew collection that we released at the end of 2022. The process, the step-by-step process of cut and sew. I was going from different fabric stores, selecting fabrics, dye houses, to the intricate details that we're building, like our buttons have our logo and engravings on them, and like where to kind of get that made, how that process looks like, going to all these different places, getting these things made, coming all back, like literally recording. We have a lot of this documented, we just haven't put it out yet, like the assembly of what it means to put together a cut and sew piece. We did some pants and some jackets with like very custom pocketing and patches and all these like very detailed stuff, and like be able to kind of see that come together over the course of 2 years, and us be able to kind of put that out. You go through those processes to learn. Like for me, it's like I wanted to learn that. Yes, we want to get a product out, but it's like I'm more so using this time, documenting time to like brand build one. I'm documenting the process, showcasing kind of like us being in LA, me running around again, showcasing what my everything is. But then also I'm learning, like I'm learning that from start to finish how to kind of create a product, building these amazing relationships to now it's like, you're able to offer these services to other people. It's like, hey, I want to kind of get this made. How should I do it? It's like, oh, I know this person here. I'll make a call. I can set it up for you. Oh, you want to make a cut and sew project? I have a whole supply chain set up in LA. We can make that call and kind of have that going. So it's like being able to, like, again, take the culmination of my life experiences to where we're at a point now. It's like from a clothing manufacturing perspective, we're all good to go. It's just me pursuing my everything.
Yeah, there's something to be said about learning by doing. The traditional way of education is you sit in a classroom, you read books, and then you take tests, and this is what we consider traditional learning. But you learn so much more, so much faster by actually going and trying, doing things. And I think this is the approach you take. take with this whole fashion stuff and actually going and feeling the fabric, the attachments that you're going to be using, the fasteners and all that, and seeing how they're going to actually build the thing, getting really involved so you know exactly how this stuff starts from just rolls of fabric to something you can actually wear. This is the same approach that even in the startup world that they take, where Paul Graham, I believe he says, do things that don't scale. The common idea for a lot of people would be just find a manufacturer in China who can make it for you and then put up a Shopify site and then start running ads on it without actually understanding how the process actually happens. And so you don't know what the customer experience is going to be like. You don't know what the product experience is going to be like. Typically, there's no customization. You don't make it about you. So you don't understand all the issues that can come up as part of this process. But by being intimately involved, you really get to know it inside and out. You can really make it custom. You can offer something different and differentiating from the rest of the market, deliver something that will be far more satisfying than someone who didn't put all this effort.
100%. And I think like there's another layer that I think is almost even more valuable. And it's that because you put in that time and now have gained all this knowledge, you've built a foundation that is built for the long term. You know, that whole kind of like the fast fashion or like things like that, things that don't have, you know, they're more of a fad than, you know, a long-term thing. Everything that I've done up to this point has been slow, methodical. Like I'm not trying to scale super quickly. It's like, I want to learn, like, right? Like because like the way I visioned everything when I was back in school was like, okay, if I'm going to build this thing, it needs to have, I want to continue building this brand. It needs to have a tech component, but it's not something that I knew I could do full time. Like I knew coming out of school, I was going to have to work to support myself, support my family. Like it was a no-brainer for me. So I've been like, since graduation to now, I've been working full-time job while developing and slowly building this brand. And again, everything I've done is like very methodical, slow. I like the money that's being put in is directly from like the money that I make, right? So it's like everything that we're building, it's like it has a very strong foundation, right? Like again, I've been making clothes for 10, 11 years, right? Everything as what it is today has been around for about 4 years. So it's just like continuing to build what we want to build. I'm very big on like making sure we have a strong foundation, something that we can always lean back on. It's like, hey, this is where we come from, this is where we started. And you know, every time we hit a new level, we have a new accomplishment, we get a new collection out, this is what we're able to, you know, kind of always look back at, like this was our starting point and showcase to our audience, the people who have followed us, you know, on our journey to this point. It's like a true testament to like, this is our everything. We're not here for a short time. We're not here just for trying to take advantage of a fad. This is here for the long run.
It's like, you got to move different if you have that long-term vision. If it's just a short-term play, then yeah, speed is really important. Scaling is vital. But if the plan is, especially with the brand, because it's like you're putting all this upfront investment into this. This is true in any business that has staying power. There's a lot of cost that comes with like just starting to get this thing off the ground and building essentially your everything from the ground up, raise slowly to get to the point that it can become self-sustaining. But till then, it's a lot of input. And I think a lot of people who want to get on this path, there's going to be a lot of you and effort being put into this without any results coming out of it directly in the short term, but
100%.
Sticking with it longer and longer. And this is what I've found for this whole podcast content, building an audience stuff. Like, you remember, like you're one of the first few people to come on the podcast when it was just audio only. This is episode 134. And so like, consider that it wasn't until episode 133, we didn't even bring cameras into this whole podcast format. And it's all just like getting good at editing a podcast, learning how to promote a podcast, learning how to create clips that people will resonate with, learning all the social media stuff, so that now I can get to this point, get into this video podcast, and then actually have it do decently well, at least on YouTube and stuff. And so it's just crazy how what you were saying, all this like deliberately growing slow, but learning so much along the way that when everything just falls into place later on, almost worth it because it's easier.
No, I think it's always worth it. I think if you do the work up front, if you put in the work, if you're operating, not taking the shortcuts, not trying to just blow up just to blow up and have nothing, you know, to be able to stand on, it hits different, right? Like and I remember when you guys started, I remember everything, your entire process. I remember it. It's like I was here, right? To where you are now, it's like you have so much knowledge that like it's almost like, you know, from a growth perspective, it's like it's slow, and then exponential, right?
Yeah.
It's like just like, you know, a startup. So it's like because you have all this foundational knowledge, all this foundational industry expertise, whatever you want to call it, you're able to continue refine while doing it, while you're already growing an audience to where it's not even like, you know the best is yet to come. It's kind of like knowing that like, oh, this is just going to get better. Like I'm just gonna like, this is just going to scale over time. But when it scales, it's going to scale exponentially. I always say like Nike, you know, Nike's one of the best brands in the world today, right? Like, I can't think of a better slogan than just do it. I think I'm gonna put what's your everything up there, selfishly, but just the power of just do it. Like, just whatever's on your mind, whatever has been, something that you've been wanting to do, but it might be scared for whatever reason. If you just do it, you're going to, it's like you get over that hurdle of fear or hesitancy, and you see like, oh, I can do this, and you're just going to get better at doing that thing. You know what I mean? Kudos to Phil Knight and them boys over there.
Yeah.
They
I
did a
mean, he
great
wrote a
job.
book, Shoe Dog.
Oh, for sure, for sure, for sure.
Dude, it's worth reading for anyone watching this who wants to understand what the process feels like, especially when you're like pushing to make that vision happen and how like on the edge, because man, Nike could have gone out of business several times.
Did you watch the movie Air by any chance?
Yeah.
Great movie. And it's just showcasing like where Nike was and who they were as a company versus what we know them to be today.
Yeah.
Completely two different things, but it goes to say like, what does it mean to be like trying to continue to push the boundaries, but having that foundation, like knowing where your foundation is, knowing that you've built something, and then be able to expand on it and grow with, you know what I mean?
And the funny thing is like where they started was with like track shoes. And he partnered with his track coach, who was like this experimenter, tinkerer type, who was constantly trying to figure out ways to improve shoe design. And then they found a manufacturer, went to Japan to actually make the shoes and then inspect and all that. So he did the groundwork and everything. And that's how Nike even started. Even before they were called Nike. People, I think, are tempted to take shortcuts, especially with the internet.
The keeping up with the Joneses.
Yeah, dude. Yeah, I hate shortcuts, man. I hate shortcuts. I see it all the time. Even on this social media stuff, bro. I see it. And I'm just like, nah, I'm not going to do it that way.
I'm 100% with you. I'm 100%. Like I want everything that I'm doing and the reflection of whatever I'm doing to be authentic. Like, I'm very big on like, it needs to align with the brand. Even from like the people we work with, what's your everything to me really resonates. And if we're putting content together, I want it to, like, everything needs to be authentic about the content we're putting out. Cause it's like, that's such a strong message. Like, I want the message to resonate. If we're highlighting a person, if we're showcasing someone's story, if we're talking about our own story, like, it needs to be genuine. And like, I don't want to fluff. I don't want to expound. It's like, no, this is exactly where we are today. This is what we've done up to this point, and you're going to continue to see the places we're aiming to go.
I think we are surrounded by a lot of fraud, people misleading or showcasing things that aren't actually true.
It's Instagram.
Yeah, it is Instagram. But here's the thing. I kind of want to experiment. I'm just experimenting with table moments, experimenting with my own life. Like, can you be authentic, completely authentic, and still win in this whole business, building an audience, whatever?
Yeah, 100%.
And so it's just like actually figuring out like how much effort it takes, how much detail you have to care about, and how you have to sort of restrain yourself too, because the temptation's out there to do what the others are doing, because it is literally rewarded on these social platforms, which I hate. I hate it so much, but it's just like, man, people are people. In the end, I believe that by not building or doing it the right way, I think is authentic to me, then it's not something I can sustain. And I think that's the biggest key to all this. I don't know what will work every day. It's just about putting the effort there, and it's the consistency over time that gets the results. And so if you are inauthentic, and being inauthentic keeps you from being able to feel good about what you're doing, just how to get ahead instead of not actually being authentic with yourself, it kind of kills your spirit, completely inhibits your ability to be consistent over the long term. People get burnout, they say. I think that's where it comes from.
Yeah, no, I mean, again, I just go back to like, if you have a solid foundation that you're building off of, it's something that you'll always be able to lean on wherever you're at in your journey. And my biggest reason for not being as consistent with like maybe social media, for example, is just like, there's certain things I tried, didn't like it, wasn't me, said I'm never doing this again, right? It was just like, I can't play that game. I actually tried it. There were certain things like day in the life kind of content. I was like, oh no, this is way too invasive for me. Like, I don't like this, right? From an internet perspective, I try to keep my pretty private. It's just finding ways to leverage these tools, because at the end of the day, internet's just a tool, right? Instagram's a tool, Twitter's a tool. It's just leveraging these tools in ways that work for me, work for what we're looking to build. I think there's a couple of things. I think there's always a way to do it. Like, I'm always going to find a way. And the second thing is there's always a market. The internet, from a positive perspective, has opened the world up, right, to, our fingertips. And I just think that like there is a niche for whatever you're trying to do. It's just about being consistent enough to be able to find and grow that niche. And if you're building something with like a, an authentic foundation, and you haven't deviated from that, and you're seeing growth, that growth is going to continue going. And then I truly believe will be exponential as more people kind of catch on. And I'm not going to say you become a trend, but like, people follow what the people around them follow. People like what people around them like. So it's one of those types of things as well. So once you get out of that first circle, that secondary circle of like audience, but being consistent in what you're doing and being authentic in what you're doing, there's going to be a market and an audience for that. I truly believe that.
One of the things I struggle with is understanding the scope of the world, how big it is and how many people there really are. And if you do the math on it, yeah, that weird thing that you're into, there are probably a couple million at least who are into that stuff too.
No,
And the
you're
internet.
one of your videos made me laugh. I think it was like black people that like rock music or something like that, like something like very niche. And you were like, "Where were you guys growing up?" Like kind of like that kind of attitude, you know. But it's
Yeah.
just like it's true. It's like there's a niche of people, and then like the more you're kind of dialed into what you're working on, the more you're kind of like introduced to that space and people in that space, and are able to kind of build those relationships and foster those and build community in those places. And it's just like again, it's kind of like not just reassuring, but also gives you confidence in what you're building. That the world's a lot bigger. I think I heard Mr. B say something that really like blew my mind. Like I speak multiple languages. He said that less than 10% of the world speaks English. When you go on the internet, you just assume everything's in English, right? But he was like, our videos that are in either Mandarin or Spanish or whatever, it was like 10x the views kind of thing, and 10x engage. It just kind of showcasing how much bigger the world is than the world that we're probably just operating in, right? And what we attribute the internet to be. The internet's way bigger, maybe the places that we're in or the communities that we're a part of or the people that we follow. It's a much, much bigger place. So it just give that context again. Like I'm a true believer there's enough space for everybody to eat. There's enough space for everyone to kind of find success. It's just about being consistent and slowly growing that audience that, through I think authenticity, being genuine and just being consistent.
The internet has allowed everyone to connect with each other, which I think is like one of the best things for humanity. But unfortunately, with the game of social media, you sort of have to go through the masses through a longer period of time to eventually find those people who really mess with you.
Yeah.
Which is where the consistency comes in. And that's what I ended up doing with Table Moments. When one video that appeals sort of to the masses, people will check out the profile and then they'll see the catalog, and those people who like other videos and they start scrolling through the timeline, they're like, okay, this is a guy whose character I like, so they end up liking me. Which, I mean, I don't have a niche, like I just post content about anything, so they end up having to like me and my takes and my thought process and even how punchy I can be sometimes.
Yeah. No, I mean, like I said, there's a niche of everything, of everybody. Like there's so many people out there, and like things that might surprise us, like it's there. It's just for us to be consistent enough to go find it and go get it,
Yeah. Like I like when I stumble on businesses that are super, super niche, but are also wildly successful. Like there's this one company called Out of Darts, and they specialize in Nerf accessories. And so like Nerf guns.
And then you realize there's a whole culture around Nerf guns. Like people
dude.
really like, it's like Legos or something. Like there's entire communities and people really enjoy the gamification of these guns, right?
Yeah, they're all customizing. They have like spring packs to increase the fire rate of these stuff, and
That's
they
so
even
crazy.
3D print their own designs and stuff. And then I just stumbled on another company today called Light My Bricks. And so you know how Lego has these build kits of like the Empire State Building, the pyramids, all that stuff. They specifically make lighting kits for those. They're doing well. They're doing really well.
But it makes sense. I remember not too long ago reading and this is like a sports reference, but Miles Turner, he's a center on the Pacers. Like apparently, like he's a huge Lego guy, and like I forgot what it was, but it was like a picture of him with some crazy Lego thing that he built, and I was just like, there's really a niche for everything. And so the fact that people are accessorizing these things, it doesn't surprise me. Like it's surprising, but like at the same time, it's like no, like I know that's how these things work. You know what I mean? There's definitely a space for this.
And I think it was Naval who also said on his podcast, like the future, if everyone had the skills to actually be entrepreneurial, build the things that they want to create, is related to their passion and their purpose, then everyone can be like sort of like their independent own business, appealing to people out there in the world. I think he makes a very good point. It really just comes down to one, knowledge, and two, your willingness to put effort into the thing that you care about. Your everything, I guess.
And it's, we live in a time where access to knowledge and access to information is instantaneous. It just got even faster with ChatGPT, right? And it's really just about like, do you want to go do it? Like your willingness to go execute and build and learn in real time. So when you find that thing that's your everything, it's like it stops becoming work. It stops becoming something like that you want to do. You don't feel like, there's no hesitancy to want to do it.
I think this is a really good concluding statement. This is your chance to let the people know what you got going on. What do you have planned for 2024?
I think hopefully by the time this comes out, we'll have already released and showcased our new studio and office space. It's going to be a place where, we're able to kind of do more stuff in real time, less dependency on manufacturers and stuff, a lot of stuff that we're able to do in-house. Really just taking all the stuff that we learned and be able to kind of do it in real time and put out ideas, very quickly. So looking forward to be able to showcase that and like all the projects and all the work that's going to be coming from here. What's Your Everything docuseries with our first episode coming out, I'm going to say in the spring. It's a project that it's one of those things that, you start 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and it's finally coming to a wrap. So very excited for that story to come out. Super, super exciting project highlighting a good friend of mine that I've known for a long time and like his journey and what he's building and how far he's come, a story that goes internationally as well. So just being able to, to kind of speak to those stories that were, the people around us. This is somebody that I went to school with, I went to high school with. So the people around me doing, really pursuing, this is really his everything. Like, he's doing this full time, which is amazing to see. And he's found an immense amount of success. So be able to capture that story and bring it to the world. I'm super excited. And, we have some products and some stuff that's going to come with that as well. So super excited for that to come. And then, like some fun stuff that we'll probably announce at a later date. But I'm looking to, like I said, have a more presence on social media, a little more consistent now that we have this physical space. I'm looking to do some more international stuff as well. So I have some stuff lined up for the end of the rest of the year.
That's cool. That's very, very cool.